spread, as I'm sure you know. So I have a lot of questions around traveling. So let's go. I'm just going to ask them in order. So soaked or dry hay, feed or no feed, getting there as directly as possible, regular stops for unloading and stretching. How often would you stop if you're stopping? Water available while traveling, how often water, boots, bandages, or bare legs while traveling, rugs or no rugs. And then somebody else asked a question about recovery techniques for travel. So if you go from Brisbane to Melbourne, I think we're looking at about 18 hours of travel. So, what are you best doing, I suppose, on the journey and on arrival to, and it's going to be individual, of course, but maybe there's, arrive 3 days early and you'll have more chance.
Well, don't ask me about that. I mean, I'm coming from such a small country, and we have from one end of the country to the other, that's about 3.5 hours maybe. And our riders, they complain if they have to go to a show, but no way I'm going, it's 3 hours drive. I was like, okay.
And where I am, 10 hours is the close show. So we trailer everywhere. And I mean, that's just normal. First, I would talk about the type of equipment. What are you trailering in? That's the most important thing if you're going a long distance. Things you want. You want the largest vehicle you can. A little single horse bumper pull is horrendous for going long distances. A huge vehicle with a lot of weight is wonderful. The other thing is you want them as close to the ground as possible. If they're sitting up high, then when you go around a corner, the physics of it make it a whole lot worse. So if you can get a large vehicle very low to the ground, you can actually travel for days if they're loose in a box. And we do that going across the country. It takes 3 days, 73 hours to go from one side to the other. If you're only exceeding the speed limit by a bunch, then it's fine if they're loose in their box. Yes, they have water, they have hay. They don't know anything's different. That's in a straight line on a huge freeway in a huge box.
So our and I should say, I know where Mike's coming from with this. My horse is in the U.S. It's just as expensive for me to drive somewhere as it is to put my horse in a semi-truck, have it in a full stable size, so they're in like 10 by 10 foot box in a semi-truck. It costs me less than $300 to go to my trainers and back. Having my horse hauled that way. If I had a bumper pull, I wouldn't haul my own horses. That isn't even an option here. They're in tiny bays in our transport trucks.
That's the next
so
paragraph.
Is, Mike's talking about a scenario that's wonderful. I'm sure everyone here is listening going, where do you get a stable in a truck? So that's the background on that. But they're even on our transport trucks.
And that's why I was saying, okay, that's optimum. Now let's get back down to reality here. You have a question?
Just ask a question about the boxes. From the point of view, in Australia, we've got the narrow, small bays, and we always tie them up. But I've noticed often I see shows on America, they're just standing in there loose.
Correct.
They travel quite well. They don't need to be tied up.
I can tell you that we always tie them in case somebody unlocks something and the horse flies out the back, but you do not tie them up, you don't tie them down, you give them 6 foot of lead, just make sure their front foot doesn't go over it.
I agree with that. I mean, it's often like a safety thing, and I mean that you want to tie them up. But we also know for long travels, I mean, this airway clearance, it's just good for them. But that just means you can take a break. I mean, if you tie them up for some reason, you have to give them a break at some point and let them be able to clear their airways. Otherwise, you'll have other problems. But mostly it's a safety thing. I mean,
What I always tell my clients is, you have a question?
Yes. Do you have any preference on whether the horse travels on a straight load or an angle?
Okay, we'll get to that in just 1 minute. That's about 2 things down the road here. First thing I always tell my clients is, if you have your own trailer, truck, lorry, whatever it is, your conveyance for the horse, you get in that and you tell your boyfriend or husband to drive you around for 20 minutes. Do that. Do it once, and you will never drive the same again. Being in the back is hard. When you go around a corner, you're using your muscles and really, really working. Every time you change directions, whether it's left and right or speed, faster or slower, your horse is working. They're working very hard back there. So don't think that it's, like you sitting in the front seat just, hanging out there. They are working to stay up the whole time. That work goes into heat. When they are back there, they are doing bodybuilding. They are using their muscles. And that generates heat. Should you put a rug on a horse? Only if you want to see how much weight they can lose, because they will sweat and they will lose a lot of weight. Airflow is the #1 thing you need in a horse van. It is almost impossible to have too much airflow. On a cold day, the horses love the air on them because they're working. So, in answer to the rug question, no.
I have a good story about the rugs or the blankets while traveling. When I was a team vet, we traveled with the horses to go far away. I don't know, we had to fly from somewhere in Holland to Hong Kong, what do I know. And the horse owners, they always came, do we need blankets? Do we need blankets? And I was normally traveling with 1 or 2 grooms, and we always said, yes, lots of blankets, lots of blankets. And the horse owners were like, really? Yeah, lots of blankets.
You need them.
But not that the horses needed them, but do you know how cold it is to fly in cargo with the horses? It's really cold. So I had nice pictures of me and the groom sitting with all the blankets on, and the horses in the containers, they were perfectly fine. So we always had lots of blankets. When you're flying, blankets.
And a little extra hay, because it's real nice to sleep on the plane. I've spent thousands of hours on planes with horses, and we could do a whole day just on the fun of flying. If you ever do get the chance to fly instead of drive somewhere, it is 1/10 as hard on the horse to fly. Flying is so easy for them because the plane doesn't jerk left or right. There are no big trucks going past it. There are no noises. It's calm. It's fabulous. But getting back to your forward or slant load, it is completely personal preference, so I'll preface it with that. With the front one, then it depends how you drive. If you go fast and slow, front load is horrible. But if you're on a road that's turning left and right, it's fabulous because all they do is lean on the sides. In a slant load, the degree of the slant is what determines what is bad and what is good. Most of the inertial forces on a trailer are front and back or left and right. And the theory behind a slant load is there are a few diagonal ones. Now, it depends on how you drive, where you drive, what would be better for your horse. If you live on a windy road, probably a front load. If you do just freeway driving, probably a straight load. But if you do some windy, some freeway, some this, some that, a slant load might be better. They're different, but you have to decide based on what you do.
I agree. I agree. When I was a vet student, I had one summer I had sort of a student job. I was an air hostess for one of the sheiks in Dubai, his racehorses. So we flew horses from Dubai to Newmarket in England, and from Newmarket in England to Kentucky. So just back and forth, and he had his own plane. And we flew all these yearlings, and we squeezed 3 of them in one container. Nowadays, with dressage horses, we can only fit in 2 of these fat dressage horses. But we squeezed in 3 of them, and none of them had no blanket, no bandages, no whatsoever. And most of them were actually not even fed on this, but that was from the trainers. They were just in with them, and then we loaded them like 2 o'clock in the morning and then flew off but they adapt amazingly well.
Feed? Like feed while transporting?
Yeah.
Oh.
Soaked hay, not soaked hay, do they choke? Do they do better with the food for their ulcers and nervousness?
The answer is yes to all that. Let's start at the back and work forward. She said ulcers. One of the best ways to cause an ulcer, if you want to do research on it, is you withhold feed for a period of time. So continuous feeding is what the horses are designed for. Constantly going in, constantly going out. If either one stops, things go bad. So yes, you should feed, but should it be soaked or should it be in a hay net? Should it be on the floor? Respiratory problems in transport are probably your number one issue. You want to go from there?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, now I'm talking as this Dane, where maximum like 2 hours or something like that. I think feeding them while transporting is mostly done like a pacifier kind of thing, then they're occupied, then they know, and the horses, they're kind of used to, they go into the trailer, and then, there's hay, and then they start chewing on that, and everything is good. I think it's more used like that. I mean, unless you really have to transport them for many hours, then they need something to work with, chew on, and I think if it's, one or the other, that's really up to the horse, and
I can tell you my horses know that little box over there has a continuous source of food. They love to go in it. You open the door and they fly in there. And it is simply because they know there's a smorgasbord in there. But if they're happy and they're eating, what could be better? Now, soaked or unsoaked, if your horse has any kind of respiratory dust allergy, if your feed is really dusty, then you need to soak it. If you have really good quality hay that has no dust, you don't have to soak it. What you don't want is you don't want them breathing in dirt and dust and everything. Keep in mind, in a transport, there should be a lot of airflow. And I don't mean a little, I mean there should be, it should feel like a fan's on you the whole time. And if that's the case, then their hay will blow up in their face also. You might want to soak it, but it depends on your hay.
Is it then, so getting to that, if we soak or we steam our hay and we put it in the float to reduce COPD and RAO and all of these respiratory problems that occur and regularly in our horses, then what about shavings on the floor, right? Because we use them to absorb any leakage from manure or any urine. Are you better hosing them down? Or, because I know my horses get steamed hay in the float, but they're on shavings and they always come out with a nice little layer of dust on their bums, So they still they're not in something that they're breathing that's dusty, but they're not in a dust-free environment by any stretch.
Hay, shavings, anything you put in there, if it's dusty, potential dust, hose it down. The other thing is horses tend to get hot in the floats, not cold. So if you hose it down, that helps reduce the temperature.
I agree. And even, I mean, in Denmark, it's a rule, you cannot transport them without any kind of shaving. I mean, we get fined if we don't have it.
Oh, really?
If the
They
police
have
stops
welfare
us, we
laws
get
like you
fined.
can't believe.
You get fined if you don't
Yes.
have shavings in the
Yes, yeah.
Because of slip injuries, is that, or
Yeah, it's
cars around
Welfare.
you have
Welfare issue.
it is. I mean, we're very much into that in Denmark.
Yes.